The patrol ship shuddered as plasma fire tore through its starboard hull. Lieutenant Marcus Chin's hands moved across emergency controls, while alarms shrieked through smoke-filled air. His squad of 8 was supposed to be running reconnaissance along the disputed border, mapping the contested zone between human and Zarathi territories. Instead, they'd stumbled into an ambush. 3 ships already drifted as burning debris. His was next. "Brace for impact!" Chin shouted, but the words died as something massive struck their vessel. Metal screamed. The hull split open like torn paper. Chin's harness snapped. He flew sideways, crashing through a collapsing bulkhead into what remained of the cargo bay. His helmet cracked against steel. Vision blurred. Through ringing ears, he heard his squad's final transmissions cut to static. The ship was falling. Gravity reasserted itself as they plummeted toward the moon surface below. Chin dragged himself toward an emergency pod, each movement sending pain through his ribs. The deck tilted violently. He tumbled, caught himself on a support beam, and saw her. A Zarathi female huddled in the corner of the cargo bay, arms wrapped around something small. Not a soldier. No armor. Just pale blue skin, delicate features, and eyes wide with terror. A prisoner? A stowaway? Chin had no time to wonder. The moon surface rushed toward them through the torn hull. He grabbed her arm and pulled. She resisted, clutching whatever she held. Chin saw it then, a child. Tiny. Maybe 3 years old in human terms. The same pale blue skin as its mother, but with darker markings along its forehead. The female's eyes met his through his cracked visor. She didn't speak. Couldn't speak. Zarathi vocal cords couldn't produce human sounds, and his translator was dead. But her expression said everything. Chin nodded once. He wrapped his arm around both of them and fired his grapple line toward the emergency pod. The cable caught. He pulled them across the tilting deck as the ship entered final descent. 20 seconds. They reached the pod. Chin shoved them inside first, then squeezed in behind them and slammed the hatch. The pod launched. Explosive bolts fired. They shot away from the dying ship just as it struck the moon's surface in a fireball that lit up the dark sky. The pod's emergency thrusters fired erratically. Damaged. They spun wildly, then slammed into rocky ground. Chin's head cracked against the interior wall. Everything went black. He woke to silence. His helmet was gone. Cold air burned his lungs, thin but breathable. His HUD was dead. His rifle was lost. Pain radiated from his left shoulder and ribs. He blinked, focusing. The pod's interior was dim, lit only by emergency strips. The Zarathi female sat across from him, perfectly still. Her eyes tracked his every movement. Chin raised his hands slowly, palms out. "Not your enemy," he said, though she couldn't understand. He pointed at himself. "Marcus." Then at her, a question in his gesture. She didn't respond. The child in her arms stirred, making soft sounds. The female's expression changed, not toward Chin, but toward her child. Worry. Fear. She touched the child's forehead, and Chin saw blood on her fingers. The child was injured. He moved slowly, reaching for his medkit. The female tensed. Chin opened the kit carefully, showing her the contents. Bandages. Sealant. Painkillers designed for multiple species. The Zarathi had similar biology to humans, silicon-based blood, but similar cardiovascular systems. He trained on xenobiology during basic. The female watched as Chin pulled out a diagnostic scanner. He pointed at the child, then at the device. She hesitated, then slowly unwrapped her arms. The child's breathing was shallow. A deep gash ran along its side where shrapnel had torn through clothing and flesh. Chin's jaw tightened. Without treatment, the wound would kill it. He worked quickly. Cleaned the wound. Applied sealant to stop the bleeding. Wrapped it in sterile bandages. The child whimpered but didn't cry. The female never took her eyes off Chin's hands. When he finished, he sat back and nodded. The female pulled the child close again, checking Chin's work with gentle fingers. Then, she did something unexpected. She reached out and touched Chin's shoulder, the injured one. Her fingers were cool against his skin through his torn uniform. She looked at him, then at his medkit. An offer. A question. Chin almost refused. His injuries weren't life-threatening. But survival meant cooperation. He nodded. The female took the medkit with careful hands. Her movements were precise, almost clinical. She cleaned his wounds, applied sealant, and wrapped his shoulder with efficiency that suggested medical training. When finished, she returned the kit and retreated to her corner with the child. They sat in silence as darkness fell outside. Chin checked the pod's systems. Communications were dead. Navigation was dead. Life support would last 3 days. After that, they'd suffocate or freeze. He looked out the small viewport. The landscape was barren, gray rock stretching endlessly under a black sky. No lights. No settlements. Just emptiness. The female watched him. Chin met her gaze and saw understanding there. She knew their situation. Trapped. Injured. Alone on a lifeless moon in the middle of a war zone. Neither side would send rescue. Human ships avoided Zarathi territory. Zarathi ships would assume she was a prisoner or collaborator. Chin settled against the pod wall. His body ached. His head throbbed. But the child was breathing easier now. That counted for something. The female pulled a thin blanket from her clothing and wrapped it around the child. Then she looked at Chin again. This time, her expression held something different. Gratitude. Chin closed his eyes, trying to think. They needed rescue. They needed shelter. They needed food and water the pod didn't have. But more than that, they needed to survive the night. Because outside, somewhere in the darkness, the war continued. And neither of them belonged anywhere anymore. The child made a small sound, almost like a word. The female responded softly, her voice melodic despite the alien tones. She was singing. A lullaby maybe. Chin didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Comfort. Safety. Love. He thought of his own mother, dead 10 years now. Thought of his squad, dead hours ago. Thought of every choice that led him here, trapped in a pod with enemies who weren't enemies at all. Just a mother and child. Just people. The singing stopped. Chin opened his eyes. The female was staring at the viewport, her face pressed close to the transparent material. Chin followed her gaze and felt his blood go cold. Lights. Moving across the landscape. Multiple sources. Coming closer. Ships. Landing nearby. Chin couldn't identify the signatures in the darkness, but they were searching. Someone had tracked the pod's descent. The female clutched her child tighter. Her eyes found Chin's. In that moment, they both understood. Whoever was coming, they came with weapons. And neither Chin nor the female could afford to be found. Chin reached for his sidearm, still holstered, still functional. He checked the charge. 70%. Enough for a fight, maybe. Not enough for a war. He looked at the female. She looked back. No words. No translation needed. Whatever happened next, they faced it together. The pod's walls suddenly felt very thin. The darkness very close. And the lights kept coming. The approaching lights split into 3 distinct groups, each moving methodically across the rocky terrain. Chin watched through the viewport as the formation became clear. A search pattern. Deliberate. Professional. His training kicked in despite the pain in his shoulder. These weren't scavengers or pirates. This was military. But whose? The female had gone completely still, the child quiet against her chest. Chin noticed how she'd positioned herself between the viewport and her offspring, a shield of flesh and bone. He'd seen human mothers do the same thing during evacuations. Some instincts transcended species. The nearest light source stopped 200 meters away. A vessel touched down, angular, sleek, definitely not human design. Zarathi. Chin's grip tightened on his pistol. The female noticed. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't move. Didn't plead. Just watched. Chin realized she expected him to kill her. The thought hit him like a physical blow. Of course she did. They were enemies. Her people and his had been tearing each other apart across 6-star systems for 4 years. He'd lost friends to Zarathi plasma fire. She'd probably lost people to human railguns. The war had taught them all the same lesson: trust your own kind, kill everyone else. But the child's wound was bandaged with his supplies. The female's hands had treated his injuries. And neither of them had anywhere to go. Chin lowered the pistol slowly. Not holstering it, he wasn't stupid, but pointing it at the floor instead of at her. The female's expression shifted. Confusion, then something harder to read. Hope? Disbelief? The Zarathi ship's hatch opened. Figures emerged in full combat armor, weapons ready. Chin counted 6. Their movements were coordinated, professional. They swept the area with scanning equipment, their lights cutting through the darkness like blades. One of them gestured toward the pod. They'd found it. Chin's mind raced. The pod had no working weapons. The hull was cracked. One breaching charge would tear it open. He could maybe kill 2 of them before they returned fire. Then he'd die. The female would die. The child would die. Or worse, they'd take them prisoner. The female leaned forward. Her hand moved to her clothing and withdrew something, a small device, metallic, with glowing symbols. An identity marker. She held it up for Chin to see, then pointed at the approaching soldiers. Her meaning was clear. They're looking for me. Chin studied the marker. The symbols meant nothing to him, but the craftsmanship spoke volumes. Intricate. Expensive. This wasn't standard military issue. The female wasn't a soldier. So what was she? The Zarathi squad moved closer. 50 meters. Chin could make out details now. Ceremonial markings on their armor, not standard combat patterns. Elite troops. The kind assigned to high-value targets or VIP protection. The female touched Chin's arm. When he looked at her, she pointed at the marker, then at herself, then at the child. Then she made a gesture Chin had seen 1,000 times in human culture, a hand over her heart. Family. Love. Protection. Understanding crashed over him. She wasn't just any Zarathi. The elite squad, the desperate flight, the civilian clothing, she was someone important. Someone worth an ambush. Someone whose capture would matter. And the child mattered even more. The squad reached the pod. Their leader examined the hull damage with a scanning device. He made a hand signal. 2 soldiers moved to the hatch. Chin heard the metallic scrape of breaching tools. 30 seconds. Maybe less. The female shifted the child in her arms, then did something that froze Chin's blood. She unwrapped part of the blanket, revealing more of the small body. The markings on the child's forehead weren't random. They formed patterns, flowing, deliberate, unmistakable. Royal marks. Chin had seen them in intelligence briefings. The child wasn't just important. The child was royalty. which meant the female was. The hatch exploded inward. Smoke filled the pod. Chin raised his pistol by instinct, but the female grabbed his wrist. Not attacking. Stopping him. She shook her head once. Don't. Armored figures burst through the smoke, weapons trained. The leader barked something in harsh Zarathi syllables. Chin didn't need translation for the tone. Stand down. Surrender. Die. The female stood slowly, holding the child. She spoke then, her voice clear and commanding despite the melodic alien cadence. The effect was immediate. Every weapon lowered slightly. The leader's posture changed. He dropped to one knee. The others followed. Chun understood. He was looking at a queen. The queen spoke again, gesturing at Chin. The soldier's attention shifted to him. Weapons came back up. The leader's response was sharp, questioning. The queen's reply was sharper. An order, not a request. One soldier objected. The queen cut him off mid-sentence with a single word that cracked like a whip. Silence fell. The tension was thick enough to taste. Chin kept his pistol ready but not aimed. One wrong move from anyone and the pod would become a tomb. The queen stepped forward, placing herself between Chin and the soldiers. She spoke again, longer this time, her free hand gesturing at the child's bandages, at Chin's torn uniform, at the destroyed patrol ship visible through the viewport. Building a narrative. Making a case. The leader responded, his tone uncertain. The queen's reply was firm. She shifted the child in her arms, revealing the wound Chin had treated. Then, she touched Chin's shoulder where she'd bandaged his injury. Demonstrating. Proving. The leader stood slowly. He studied Chin with visible hostility, but lowered his weapon. An order passed to the others. They lowered their weapons too, though every movement radiated readiness to fire. The queen turned to Chin. She handed him the identity marker, pressing it into his palm. Then, she touched her chest, his chest, and the child's forehead. A sequence. A promise. Chin didn't need words to understand. You saved my child. I will not forget. The leader barked another command. Two soldiers moved forward, reaching for Chin. He tensed, but the queen stopped them with a gesture. She spoke again, her tone leaving no room for argument. The soldiers stepped back. The queen looked at Chin one more time. Her expression was complex: gratitude, sorrow, determination. She knew what happened next. They both did. She had to go with her people. He couldn't come. Their species were at war. Saving a life didn't end that. But it changed something. The queen handed the child to one of the soldiers carefully, ensuring the bandages weren't disturbed. Then, she approached Chin until they were face to face. She placed her hand over his heart, the gesture she'd made before. Family. Love. Protection. Then, she touched her own heart. Debt. Honor. Remember. She turned and walked through the breach. The soldiers formed up around her and the child. The leader gave Chin a final look, part warning, part curiosity, then followed. Within seconds, they were gone. The pod was empty except for Chin and the darkness. Chin stood in the ruined hatch, watching the lights move away. The queen's ship lifted off, followed by the others. They rose into the black sky and vanished among the stars. Silence returned. Chin was alone. He looked down at the identity marker in his hand. The symbols glowed softly. He had no idea what they meant, but he understood their weight. A queen's marker. A promise. A debt that crossed battle lines and species. He also understood that keeping it might get him killed. Chin tucked it into his vest anyway. His squad was dead. His ship was debris. He was stranded on a hostile moon with no communications and no rescue coming. But the child would live. That mattered. He turned back to the pod's interior and began taking inventory. Emergency rations. Water recycler. Survival kit. Enough to last maybe 4 days if he was careful. The pod's beacon was dead, but the power cells might be salvageable. If he could rig something, he might signal a human patrol. If any were close. If they didn't assume he was a deserter or collaborator. If the Zarathi didn't find him first. Chin allowed himself a bitter smile. Survival meant dealing with impossible odds. He'd done it before. His mother had taught him that. Keep moving, keep thinking, keep breathing. Everything else was detail. He settled against the pod wall and closed his eyes, letting exhaustion pull at him. Tomorrow he'd figure out shelter, water sources, signal options. Tonight he'd survived. The Queen had survived. The child had survived. In a war where death was the only constant, that almost felt like victory. Hours passed. Chin dozed fitfully, pain and cold keeping real sleep away. When light finally crept through the viewport, it wasn't the moon's distant sun. It was artificial. Clothes. Chin was on his feet instantly, pistol ready. Another ship. Smaller than the Zarathi vessels. The hull configuration was familiar. Human. His rescue. Or his execution. The ship landed 30 meters from the pod. Chin's heart hammered as the hatch opened. 3 figures emerged in human combat armor. One carried a medical kit. One carried scanning equipment. The third carried a very large rifle pointed directly at the pod. Chin stepped into the hatch opening, hands visible but not raised. Showing the pistol but not aiming it. Letting them see him. The medic stopped. Scanned him. Spoke into a comm. The one with the rifle didn't lower it. The medic approached slowly. "Lieutenant Chen?" "Confirmed." Chen's voice was rough. "You're alone?" "Now, yes." "The Zarathi presence?" "Gone." The medic looked past Chen into the pod. Checking. Confirming. Chen didn't move. Let them be thorough. Let them verify. He had nothing to hide except a marker burning against his chest. "Your squad?" "Kia." "All of them." The medic's expression softened. "I'm sorry. How did you survive?" Chin chose his words carefully. "Emergency pod. Luck. Stubborn refusal to die. The wreckage showed enemy fire. It was an ambush. Did you see any survivors from the Zarathi ships?" Chin's mind flashed to the Queen's face. The child's wound. The royal markings. "No," he lied. "Everyone died." The medic studied him. Chin kept his expression neutral, a mask he'd perfected over 4 years of war. After a moment, the medic nodded. "Let's get you home, Lieutenant." Home. The word felt foreign. Chin had been in space for 3 years, moving from deployment to deployment. Earth was a memory. Family was a grave. Home was wherever they sent him next. But he nodded. Let them help him aboard. Let them treat his injuries properly. Let them debrief him on the ambush, the casualties, the failure of intelligence that led 8 soldiers into a death trap. He told them everything except the truth. Omitted the Queen. Omitted the child. Omitted the moment when enemy became something else entirely. The ship lifted off. Through the viewport, Chin watched the moon shrink away. The pod was a tiny speck on gray rock. Evidence. Proof. But without bodies or witnesses, it proved nothing. The marker pressed against his skin. A secret. A debt. A connection to someone he'd never see again. Unless he did. Chin closed his eyes and let the ship carry him toward whatever came next. The war continued. People died. Lines were drawn and redrawn. But somewhere out there, a child breathed because of bandages and sealant. A queen remembered because of mercy instead of murder. Maybe that didn't change anything. Maybe it changed everything. Chin didn't know. He was just a soldier. Just a survivor. Just a man who'd made a choice and lived with it. The marker burned. The memory held. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the war ground on. 3 months later, Chin was back in rotation. New squad, new ship, same war. The debriefing had been thorough but inconclusive. No blame assigned. No medals given. Just a note in his file about surviving an ambush through quick thinking and emergency protocols. He'd told his story so many times it almost felt true. Almost. The marker stayed hidden in his bunk, wrapped in cloth and tucked into the false bottom of his footlocker. He'd examined it countless times during sleepless nights, trying to decipher the symbols. The glow had faded but never disappeared. Sometimes he thought he could feel warmth from it, though that was probably imagination. His new assignment was different. His new CO, Captain Sarah Wells, was different. She was younger than most captains, sharp-eyed and deliberate. During their first briefing, she'd studied Chin's file longer than necessary. "You are the survivor," she'd said. Not a question. "One of many, ma'am. The only one from that ambush." "Yes, ma'am." She'd looked at him then, really looked, like she could see through his uniform into the secrets beneath. "That's either extremely lucky or extremely skilled." "Both, ma'am." She'd smiled slightly. "Good. I need both." Now, 12 weeks later, Chun understood why. Captain Wells ran intelligence operations, not standard combat. Her squad didn't patrol borders. They crossed them, gathered information, disrupted supply lines, rescued prisoners. The kind of missions that didn't appear in official reports. The kind of missions that brought Chin face to face with the enemy regularly. He'd seen dozens of Zarathi combatants since returning to duty. He'd fought them, killed some, watched others die. But none wore royal markings. None moved with a queen's command. None made him reach unconsciously for the marker hidden back on his ship. Until tonight. The mission was supposed to be simple reconnaissance. A Zarathi supply depot on a contested asteroid. Get in, photograph the inventory, get out. No engagement unless necessary. Wells had been clear. But intelligence was wrong. Again, the depot wasn't a supply station. It was a prisoner transfer point. And the prisoners weren't soldiers. Chin watched through his scope as Zarathi guards moved civilians into a transport ship. Dozens of them. All females. All with children. His stomach turned. He'd heard rumors about this. The Zarathi consolidating their population, moving non-combatants away from war zones. Human Command called it strategic relocation. The soldiers had darker names for it. "Eyes on target." Wells' voice crackled in his helmet. "Confirm cargo type." Chin zoomed in. The civilians moved slowly, many injured or malnourished. The children clung to their mothers. The guards weren't gentle, but they weren't cruel either. Just efficient. Moving assets. Following orders. "Civilian transport," Chin reported. "Non-combatants and juveniles." Silence on the comm then, Wells. "Weapons. None visible on the civilians. Guards are armed, but standard loadout." "Military value?" Chin knew what she was asking. Were these targets or just people? Did they matter strategically or only morally? "Minimal, ma'am." "Then we hold position. Observe and document only." "Understood." But Chin kept watching, counting faces, seeing the fear. One child stumbled. Her mother caught her, but the guard shoved them forward. The child cried out, a sound that carried across the vacuum through Chin's external audio sensors. His finger tightened on the scope's zoom. The child's face came into focus. Pale blue skin. Dark markings on her forehead. Different patterns than before, but similar style. Royal lines. Not the same child he'd saved. But close. Related maybe. The mother's profile turned toward the transport. Chen's breath caught. No. Impossible. He zoomed closer. The features were wrong. The markings different. Not the queen. Not her child. Just another mother. Just another kid. But for a moment, the resemblance had been enough to make his heart stop. Chen, report status. He forced his voice steady. All quiet. Transport loading normally. Copy. Maintain observation. The loading continued. Chen documented everything with his helmet cam. Serial numbers on the transport. Guard patterns. Defensive positions. All the data Wells would need for analysis. All useless for helping the people below. The last civilian entered the transport. The guards began their final sweep. Chen was about to signal Wells when movement caught his eye. A small figure darted from behind a cargo container. A child. Male. Maybe 5 years old. Running toward the transport. Toward his mother probably. The guards saw him. One raised their weapon. Not to fire. To intercept. But the child was fast, desperate. He dodged between crates. The guard pursued. They cornered him against the transport's hull. The child fought. Tiny fists against armored legs. Useless. The guard grabbed him by the arm. Lifted him off the ground. The child screamed, rage and terror mixed together. The guard carried him toward the transport hatch. Then, the child's hand moved. Fast. He grabbed something from the guard's belt. A knife. Small. Ceremonial maybe. He stabbed wildly. The blade scraped across armor. The guard dropped him in surprise. The child ran. Wrong direction. Away from the transport. Away from his mother. Into the asteroid field's maze of machinery and shadows. 3 guards pursued. Their weapons came up. Set to stun probably. Maybe. Chen made a decision. Contact. He keyed his comm. 1 juvenile hostile. Guards in pursuit. Stand down, Wells ordered. Do not engage. Guard weapons are active. Juvenile is unarmed and isolated. I said stand down, Lieutenant. Chen was already moving. He released his maglock and dropped silently from his perch. The asteroid's weak gravity let him cross 30 meters in seconds. He landed behind a fabrication unit just as the guards rounded the corner. The child was trapped, back against a storage tank. Guards forming a semicircle. One of them spoke, harsh, commanding. The child shook his head. Defiant. Terrified. The guard adjusted his weapon. From stun to kill. Chen shot him. The plasma bolt took the guard in the shoulder. Not lethal. Disabling. The Zarathi went down. The others spun toward Chen's position. He was already moving. Combat training took over. Drop, roll, fire. Another guard fell. The third got a shot off. It missed by centimeters. Chen didn't miss. Third guard down. All alive. All wounded. All out of the fight. The child stared at him. Chen stared back. Neither moved. 2 species. 2 sides. No shared language. Just a human soldier who just destroyed his career and a Zarathi child who didn't understand why. Chen holstered his weapon slowly. Raised his hands. Non-threatening. The child's grip on the knife tightened. Chen, what the hell are you doing? Wells' voice was acid in his ear. Securing a juvenile hostile, ma'am. By shooting 3 guards? They were armed. Escalation was justified. Bullshit. Abort now. That's a direct order. Chin muted his calm court-martial offense. Career suicide. He'd deal with it later. If there was a later. He pointed at the child, then at the transport. Your mother. Your home. The child understood. Shook his head. Wouldn't go. Chin pointed at the wounded guards. Danger. More coming. The child glanced at them, then back at Chin. The standoff broke when the transport's alarms blared. The guards were discovered. Response teams would arrive in minutes. Chin had seconds to decide. He approached the child slowly. Knelt down to his level. The child raised the knife. Chin didn't stop. He pulled the marker from his vest, the Queen's marker, and held it out. The child's eyes went wide. He dropped the knife, reached for the marker with shaking hands, touched the symbols like they were sacred. Then he looked at Chin with an expression beyond his years. Recognition. Understanding. Impossible but undeniable. The child spoke. One word. Chin didn't know the language, but he felt the weight. Then the child grabbed Chin's hand and pulled. Chin followed. No time for thought. Just movement. The child led him through machinery and shadows with the confidence of someone who knew every meter. They emerged near the transport's far side. The hatch was closing. The child released Chin's hand and ran. A figure appeared in the hatch. Female. She saw the child and dropped to her knees. The child crashed into her arms. She looked up. Saw Chin. Her face was different, but her expression was identical. Gratitude. Sorrow. Debt. She touched her chest. Her child's head. Chin's direction. Then she pulled the child inside. The hatch sealed. The transport lifted off, engines burning bright against the darkness. Chin stood alone in an active war zone with his calm muted and 3 wounded guards at his back. Reinforcements would arrive any moment. He had no extraction plan. No plausible explanation. No way to justify 3 counts of assault on foreign combatants during a non-engagement operation. He was finished. But the child was with his mother. That counted for something. Chin reactivated his calm. The verbal assault was immediate. Wells' voice, other squad members, command protocols, all demanding explanation simultaneously. He let them talk. Let them rage. He'd answer later. After they dragged him back to the ship in restraints. After the court-martial. After whatever came next. He looked up at the stars where the transport had vanished. Somewhere out there, 2 children breathed because a soldier had made choices that defied orders. 2 mothers held their offspring because mercy had, twice now, overridden military necessity. The marker was gone. Given back to its people. The physical proof of his first encounter had vanished with that child. But the memory remained. And something else. The growing certainty that these moments mattered. That they changed things. Lieutenant Chen. Wells' voice had gone cold. Dangerous. Return to extraction point immediately. You are relieved of duty pending investigation. Understood, ma'am. He started back. The wounded guards were conscious now, watching him with pain and confusion. Chin met their eyes. Let them see him. Let them report everything. He had nothing to hide anymore. Maybe that was freedom. Maybe that was just stupidity. Chin didn't know. He was just a soldier who kept making impossible choices. And somehow, impossibly, kept surviving them. The court-martial lasted 3 days. Chin stood at attention while officers dissected his actions frame by frame. The helmet cam footage was damning. 3 shots fired. 3 guards wounded. 0 justification under established rules of engagement. His defense was simple. He'd observed a threat to a juvenile non-combatant and intervened within the scope of his training. The fact that the juvenile was Zarathi didn't change the calculus. Children were protected under the interstellar accords. The guards had escalated to lethal force. He responded appropriately. The prosecution tore that apart. The child had stolen a weapon, had attacked a guard, had fled instead of surrendering. Any threat was self-created. Chen's intervention wasn't heroic. It was insubordination during active intelligence gathering. It had compromised the mission, endangered his squad, violated direct orders. All true. Chen didn't deny it, didn't justify, just stated facts. He'd seen a child about to be killed. He'd stopped it. If the same situation occurred tomorrow, he'd make the same choice. The presiding judge, a stone-faced colonel named Martinez, studied him for a long moment. "Even knowing the consequences, Lieutenant?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" Chen thought about the Queen's hand over his heart, the child's wound under his bandages, the marker he'd carried for months. "Because some things matter more than orders, sir." The courtroom went silent. Martinez's expression didn't change. "Dismissed. We'll reconvene with a verdict at 0800 tomorrow." That night, Chen sat in the brig and waited. He'd made peace with whatever came. Discharge probably. Prison possibly. They couldn't prove he was a traitor. He'd shot to wound, not to kill, and he'd attacked enemy combatants who'd drawn weapons. But they could prove insubordination. That alone was enough to end his career. His cellmate was a supply officer who'd been caught smuggling rations. They didn't talk. Chen preferred silence. It let him think about what came next. Civilian life. Earth. A future without uniforms or orders. Strangely, the idea didn't terrify him. Maybe he'd had enough of war. At 0600, a guard arrived. "Lieutenant Chen, you have a visitor." Chen frowned. He hadn't requested anyone. Didn't have family. His squad wouldn't risk association with a court-martialed officer. "Who?" "Didn't give a name. Just said it was important." Chen followed the guard to a private meeting room. Inside, Captain Wells waited. She stood when he entered, her expression unreadable. "Sir," Chen said carefully. "Sit down, Lieutenant." He sat. She remained standing, pacing. "I've been doing this for 11 years, she said finally. "Intelligence work. Black Ops. The missions that don't exist. I've seen soldiers do terrible things for good reasons, and good things for terrible reasons. I've learned not to judge, just to evaluate." Chen waited. "I evaluated you." Well, stop pacing. "You're either the bravest or stupidest officer I've ever commanded. I can't decide which." "Probably both, ma'am." She almost smiled. "Almost." "The verdict comes down in 2 hours. You'll be found guilty. Insubordination. Unauthorized engagement. They'll strip your rank and discharge you. Quietly. No prison time. No publicity. Just done." Chen nodded. He expected nothing less. "Unless," Wells continued, "you accept a transfer." Chen looked up sharply. Wells pulled a data pad from her jacket. "There's a unit. Officially it doesn't exist. Unofficially it handles situations that fall between military necessity and moral obligation. First contact protocols. Civilian evacuations. Prisoner exchanges. The things regular forces can't or won't do." "Sir?" "They want you. Your record from the ambush survival. Your actions last week. Someone high up thinks you have the right perspective." She set the pad on the table. "This is a one-time offer. Accept the transfer and the court-martial disappears. Decline and you're out." Chen stared at the pad. "What's the catch?" "It's dangerous. More than regular combat. You'll operate alone or in small teams. Deep in contested territory. No backup. No official support. If you die, there's no death benefit. No memorial. You just vanish. And if I succeed, you might save people who aren't supposed to matter. Soldiers. Civilians. Both sides. None of it will be recognized. None of it will be rewarded. You'll just keep doing it until you can't anymore. Chin picked up the pad. The screen showed a single word, transfer. Below it, a biometric scanner. His choice. His future. No more gray areas. Either he was a soldier who followed orders, or he was something else. He thought about the Queen's face. The child's wound. The mother pulling her son into the transport. All the people who'd lived because someone broke the rules. He pressed his thumb to the scanner. The screen flashed green. Confirmed. Wells nodded. Report to docking bay 7 at 1,400 hours. Someone will meet you. Don't be late. She left without another word. Chin sat alone in the meeting room with a data pad and a future he didn't fully understand. The court-martial would convene, issue its verdict, and he wouldn't be there to hear it. He'd already moved on. At 1400, Chin stood in docking bay 7 with a single bag of possessions. His uniform was clean. His weapons were loaded. His past was officially over. A ship waited, small, unmarked, built for speed and stealth. The hatch opened. A figure emerged. Male. Older. Scarred face. Hard eyes that had seen too much. Lieutenant Chen? That's me. Not anymore. The man tossed him a different uniform. Darker. No insignia. From now on, you're whatever the mission needs. Soldier. Diplomat. Medic. Ghost. Think you can handle that? Chin looked at the uniform. At the ship. At the future he'd chosen. Yes. Good. We leave in 5 minutes. Brief you on route. The man turned back toward the ship, then paused. One thing. The unit you're joining, we don't pick sides. We pick people. Human. Zarathi. Doesn't matter. If someone needs help and we can provide it, we do. You have a problem with that? Chin thought about a queen's gratitude. A child's trust. A marker he'd carried across battle lines. No problem. The man smiled. First genuine emotion Chin had seen from him. Welcome to the Accord Initiative, Chin. Try not to die on your first mission. Chin boarded the ship. The hatch sealed. The engines powered up. Through the viewport, he watched the docking bay recede. His old life. His old self. All falling away into the darkness. The man, still unnamed, sat across from him. First mission is in 6 hours. Prisoner exchange. 50 humans for 50 Zarathi. Neutral ground. Both sides are paranoid. Both sides are armed. Our job is to make sure everyone goes home. What if they don't want to go home? Then we improvise. The man pulled out a data pad. You'll be handling the Zarathi side, making sure their people are treated correctly. Unharmed. Respected. Chin raised an eyebrow. Why me? Because you have a reputation. I do. The man turned the pad around. Chin's breath stopped. The screen showed an image, grainy, taken from distance, but unmistakable. Him. Kneeling before a Zarathi child. Holding out a marker. This photo has been circulating in Zarathi command channels for 2 weeks, the man said. They don't know who you are. Don't know your name. But they know the marker. Royal seal. Given to one of their queens during a classified incident. Returned to one of their civilians during an unauthorized rescue. Chen's mind raced. How did you? We know everything. It's our job. The man leaned forward. The Zarathi are calling you the human who remembers. They don't trust us. But some of them are starting to trust you. That makes you valuable. That makes you useful. I'm not a diplomatic tool. No. You're a soldier who does the right thing even when it's stupid. That's different. That's rare. That's exactly what we need. The ship jumped to FTL. Stars stretched into lines. Chen sat in silence, processing. He thought saving the Queen was a single moment. A choice made and finished. But it had become something else. A reputation. A symbol. A bridge between species who'd been killing each other for years. He didn't want that weight. Didn't ask for it. But he couldn't put it down. What's your name? Chen asked. The man considered. For this mission, I'm Commander Blake. Next mission, I might be someone else. You'll learn. And the unit? The Accord Initiative? Started 5 years ago. Small. Secret. Funded by people on both sides who are tired of watching civilians die for military objectives. We save who we can. Document what we can't. Try to remember that enemies are just people on the other side of a line someone else drew. Noble. Naive, Blake corrected. But it's better than nothing. The ship dropped from FTL 6 hours later. A space station hung in the darkness. Old, neutral territory maintained by a third species who stayed out of human Zarathi conflicts. The prisoner exchange was scheduled in the main docking bay. Chen's first mission for the Accord Initiative. 50 lives hanging in the balance. No combat. Just diplomacy and hope. The irony wasn't lost on him. Blake handed him an earpiece. I'll handle the human side. You take the Zarathi. Make sure they feel safe. Make sure they know we honor agreements. Any problems, you signal me immediately. And if both sides decide to start shooting, then we die professionally. Blake checked his sidearm. Try to avoid that. They docked. The bay was massive, cold, echoing. 2 ships waited, 1 human, 1 Zarathi. Both had weapons powered but not aimed. Both had troops ready but not deployed. The tension was visible like heat shimmer. 50 humans stood on one side, 50 Zarathi on the other. Between them, 100 meters of empty space. Too far for trust. Too close for comfort. Blake moved toward the humans. Chen moved toward the Zarathi. He could feel their eyes on him. Assessing. Suspicious. He was the enemy. The human. The one who'd killed their soldiers in dozens of battles across half a dozen worlds. He stopped 10 meters away. Close enough to talk. Far enough to run. 1 Zarathi stepped forward. A female, older, with scars that told stories of combat and survival. She spoke. The translator in Chen's earpiece rendered it. You are the negotiator? I am. You come armed. As do you. Both sides are cautious. She studied him. You have kind eyes for a killer. Chen almost laughed. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me this week. Her expression didn't change. Your people are prepared to honor the exchange? They are. And yours? If your commander acts in good faith, we will match. Then we have no problem. We have many problems, human. This exchange solves only one. She was right. But one problem was better than none. Chen gestured at the prisoners behind her. Are they ready to go home? Some. Others have no home to return to. Your war has taken that from them. Our war. It's as much yours. Is it? She tilted her head. Did humans not fire the first shots? Chen had heard the official version. Zarathi aggression. Unprovoked attacks. Human self-defense. But he'd also heard whispers. Rumors. Alternative narratives. The truth was probably buried under 4 years of propaganda and corpses. I don't know who started it, Chen admitted. I just know I want it to end. The Zarathi female regarded him for a long moment. You are different than I expected. How so? Most humans carry hatred like weapons. You carry something else. What? She stepped closer. Close enough that Chin could see the silver tones in her eyes. Close enough to kill him if she chose. Hope, she said quietly. Foolish. Dangerous. But real. She turned and gave orders. The Zarathi prisoners began moving forward. Slowly. Carefully. Chin signaled Blake. The human prisoners started forward too. Both groups approached the center of the bay. Both groups looked terrified. Chin walked with them. Blake mirrored him on the opposite side. They met in the middle, two commanders, two species, one moment of fragile trust. No incidents, Blake said. No complications. We complete the exchange and everyone leaves. The Zarathi female nodded. Agreed. The prisoners passed each other. Humans moving toward their ship. Zarathi moving toward theirs. Some looked at each other with hatred. Some with curiosity. Most just looked exhausted. One Zarathi, young, injured, limping, stumbled. Chin caught her before she fell. Their eyes met. She flinched. Expected violence, maybe. Expected cruelty. Chin steadied her gently. You're safe. Keep moving. She stared at him. Then, whispered something the translator couldn't catch. Moved on. The exchange completed. Both groups reached their respective ships. Hatches sealed. Engines powered up. No shots fired. No incidents. No deaths. A miracle in miniature. Blake and Chin retreated to their ship. The Zarathi female watched them go. Just before the hatch closed, Chin saw her raise one hand. Palm out. A gesture humans use for goodbye. He returned it. She nodded once. Then, vanished inside. The ship lifted off. The space station receded. Mission complete. Blake sat back, releasing a breath. That went better than expected. You expected worse? I always expect worse. Haven't been disappointed yet. Chin felt the exhaustion hit. Adrenaline crash. The weight of 50 lives no longer in immediate danger. How often do we do this? Often as we can. Which isn't often enough. Blake pulled out a flask. Took a drink. Offered it to Chin. You did good work today. The Zarathi officer, Captain Velris, she's notoriously difficult. The fact that she didn't shoot you is practically a standing ovation. Chin declined the flask. She said I carry hope. I'm not sure if that was a compliment. Coming from Velris? Definitely a compliment. Also a warning. Hope gets people killed in war zones. So does hopelessness. True. Blake put away the flask. Get some rest. Next mission is in 3 days. Evacuation of civilian colony. Human Zarathi mixed population. Under attack from raiders. Both governments have written them off. We haven't. How many civilians? 300. Give or take. How many ships do we have? 1. This one. Chin stared. That's impossible. Yeah. Blake smiled. Welcome to the Accord Initiative. We specialize in impossible. Chin went to his bunk. Lay down. Closed his eyes. But sleep didn't come. He kept seeing faces. The queen. The child. The prisoners. The young female he'd steadied. All the people caught between two species who couldn't remember why they hated each other. Only that they did. 300 civilians. 1 ship. Impossible odds. Just another day at work. Chin finally slept. And dreamed of royal markers, children's laughter, and a war that might someday, impossibly, end. When he woke, the ship was already approaching the colony. Time to save people. Time to do the impossible. Time to prove that hope wasn't just foolish. It was necessary. The colony was burning. Chin watched through the viewport as flames painted orange and red across the settlement's domes. 3 raider ships circled like predators, human vessels, but pirates cared nothing for species loyalty. They attacked whoever was weakest. Today, that meant 300 civilians with no defenses. "Can we outfight them?" Chin asked. Blake studied the tactical display. "No. We're faster but outgunned 3-1. In a straight fight, we lose. Then we don't fight straight. Ideas?" Chin thought fast. 3 ships. 300 civilians. 1 transport. The math was brutal. We need a distraction. Something big enough to pull the raiders away from the colony. What kind of distraction? The kind that looks like easy money. Chin pulled up the colony's records. Demographics. Resources. Inventory. There, a cargo depot on the colony's edge. Filled with refined metals. Platinum. Iridium. Worth millions. "We broadcast a distress signal," Chin said. "Make it look like the depot's defenses are failing. The raiders will go for the cargo instead of the civilians. While they're busy looting, we evacuate." Blake shook his head. "They'll see through it. Pirates aren't stupid. They don't have to believe it completely. They just have to be greedy enough to check." "That gives us 10 minutes. Maybe 15. To evacuate 300 people? You said you specialized in impossible." Blake laughed. Dark. Humorous. "All right. Set it up. I'll prep the transport bay. This goes wrong, we die with everyone else." "Understood." Chin worked fast. Crafted a distress signal that sounded desperate enough to be real. Made it sloppy, dropped words, broken audio, the signature of someone under fire and panicking. Added just enough detail about the cargo to make it appetizing. Then broadcast it on frequencies pirates monitored. 20 seconds later, 1 raider ship broke off, heading for the depot. 30 seconds. The second ship followed. 45 seconds. The third hesitated, then joined the others. "Go," Chin said. The ship dropped fast. Blake piloted like a demon, hard burn, steep approach, landing that rattled Chin's teeth. The cargo ramp dropped before they touched ground. Chin was moving before the engine shut down. The colony was chaos. Civilians ran in every direction, humans and Zarathi both, mixed together by circumstance and panic. Children screamed. Adults shouted. Fire spread through damaged domes. Chin activated his helmet's external speakers. "Everyone listen." His voice boomed over the noise. "Evacuation transport in the central plaza. Move now. Leave everything. Just move." Some listened. Most kept panicking. Chin grabbed the nearest civilian, a human male, middle-aged, bleeding from a head wound. "Get to the plaza. Spread the word. We have maybe 10 minutes." The man stared. "Who are you?" "Someone trying to save your life." "Go." The man went. Chin moved deeper into the colony. Found a group of Zarathi huddled in a collapsed dome. 5 adults. 8 children. 2 terrified to move. Chin knelt. Made himself non-threatening. "I'm here to help. Ship in the plaza. Safety. You understand?" One of the adults, a female, pointed at his uniform. "Human military. Not anymore. Now I'm just transport. Please. There's no time." She studied him. Whatever she saw made her nod. She spoke to the others. They moved. Slowly. Chin led them through the smoke toward the plaza. More groups emerged. Word was spreading. The plaza filled with bodies. Human. Zarathi. All desperate. All hoping Chen wasn't lying. Blake's voice crackled in Chen's ear. "We're at capacity. 200 aboard. The ship won't hold more." Chen looked around. Easily another 100 civilians still scattered through the colony. "It has too. Physics says otherwise." "Then, change the physics. Stack people. Use the cargo bay. The engine compartments. Anywhere. Chen, we're not leaving anyone." Silence. "Ben!" "You're insane. I've been told. Now help me load these people." The next 8 minutes were controlled chaos. Chen and Blake crammed civilians into every available space. The ship groaned. Alarms blared about weight limits and life support capacity. Chen ignored them. Kept loading. The raiders would realize the distress signal was fake any moment. They'd come back angry, armed, ready to kill anyone they found. 250 aboard. 270. 290. Final boarding? Chen shouted. "Anyone still out there, move now." A figure emerged from the smoke. Human. Female. Carrying something wrapped in cloth. She ran toward the ship but stumbled. Chen caught her. The cloth fell away. A Zarathi child. Infant. Maybe 6 months old. Alone. The woman wasn't its mother, wrong species. She'd just grabbed it. Saved it. "Please," the woman gasped. "Her mother is dead. I couldn't leave her." Chen took the child. It was so light. So small. "You did the right thing." 301. "Chen." Blake's voice was urgent. "Raiders are inbound. 30 seconds. Chen sprinted for the ship. The cargo ramp was already closing. He dove through the gap, rolling to protect the infant. The ramp sealed. Engines screamed. The ship lifted just as plasma fire tore through where they'd been standing. The raiders had returned. 3 ships. Weapons hot. Very, very angry. "Hold on." Blake threw the ship into evasive maneuvers. Civilians screamed as gravity shifted wildly. Chen held the infant close, using his body as cushioning. Plasma bolts streaked past. One grazed their hull. Alarmed shrieked. Blake cursed creatively and pushed the engines past safety limits. The ship shuddered, rattled, threatened to tear apart. They'd broke atmosphere. The raiders pursued, but Blake was better. Faster. He threaded through asteroid debris the raiders couldn't match. One pirate ship clipped a rock and spun away. The other 2 kept coming. "Jump coordinates locked," Blake said. "Jumping in 5. A plasma bolt struck their port engine. The ship lurched. The jump drive whined. Chen held the infant and prayed to gods he didn't believe in. Jumping! The universe twisted. Stars became lines. The raiders vanished. They were away. Silence except for crying children and gasping adults. 301 people crammed into a ship built for 50. Impossible. Insane. Done. Chen looked down at the infant in his arms. She stared back with huge eyes. Zarathi eyes. Silver and deep. She didn't cry. Just watched him with ancient awareness that didn't match her age. The woman who'd saved her appeared, limping. Is she okay? Chen checked. No injuries. Just scared. She's perfect. You saved her life. Someone had to. The woman collapsed against a wall. Her mother tried to reach the ship. Didn't make it. I saw the baby and just grabbed her. I don't know what happens now. Now she lives. That's what happens. The woman nodded. Exhausted. Beyond thinking. She closed her eyes. Chen carried the infant through the packed ship. Found a corner with slightly more space. Sat down. The child made soft sounds. Not words. Just noises. He'd heard similar sounds from the Queen's child. Universal language of need and trust. Blake appeared, squeezing through the crowd. Damage report. Port engine at 60%. Life support critical. Supplies for 3 days. Nearest safe port is 6 days away. So we're dead. Probably. Blake sat down. Saw the infant. Who's this? Orphan. Human woman saved her. Blake studied the child. Zarathi royal markings. Smaller branch of the family maybe. But definitely royal. Chin's heart sank. You're sure? Spent years studying their culture. Those forehead patterns are genetic. Only royals have them. Blake met Chin's eyes. You just saved a Zarathi princess. I saved a baby. Same thing in this case. The weight of it settled over Chin. 2 royal children now. First the Queen's offspring. Now this princess. Coincidence? Fate? Just bad luck. What do we do with her? Chin asked. Keep her alive. Get her to someone who can care for her properly. Zarathi government maybe. Or one of their refugee settlements. They'll have questions. They always do. We'll answer honestly. Human soldiers saved Zarathi civilians, including one very important child. Maybe that means something. Maybe it doesn't. The infant grabbed Chin's finger, held on with surprising strength. Chin looked at her and saw the future. Not the war. Not the hatred. Just a child who deserved better than dying in a collapsing dome because her species was on the wrong side of a line. We need to make this mean something, Chin said. What? All of it. The evacuations. The exchanges. The saves. We need people to know humans and Zarathi aren't just enemies. We're both just people trying to survive. Blake smiled. Sad. Weary. That's the dream. Problem is, dreams don't win wars. Weapons do. Then, maybe it's time for a different kind of war. And how do we fight that? Chin looked around. 301 civilians. 2 species. 1 ship. All alive because 2 soldiers decided math wasn't destiny. 1 life at a time. Until enough lives add up to matter. That'll take years. Decades maybe. Then, we better start now. The infant cooed. Chin rocked her gently. Blake watched for a moment, then stood. I'll check on our dying engines. You handle the princess. Welcome to the hardest job in the galaxy. Blake left. Chin sat alone with the child. Around him, 300 voices spoke in 2 languages. Some cried. Some laughed. Some just breathed. Grateful. Alive. Together. The ship limped toward safety. 6 days with broken engines and overcrowded life support. 6 days that might kill them all. But today, 301 people didn't die. Today, a princess lived because a woman cared more about saving a life than about species. Today, Chin held another royal child and felt the weight of impossible responsibility. The marker was gone. The Queen was lost to memory. But the work continued. 1 life at a time. Until enough lives added up to matter. Until the war ended not with weapons but with a simple, radical idea. Enemies were just people waiting to be remembered. Chin closed his eyes. The infant slept in his arms. The ship's engines hummed their damaged song. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, 301 people dreamed of home. Whatever home meant now.